Okay, looks like we're recording, and I am very excited to have my friend Almira Tanner on the channel. Almira is the lead organizer of Direct Action Everywhere. And Almira, thank you so much for coming on the show. I know you're an extremely busy person, so it's quite an honor.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, and you know, I'm co-producing this channel with Wayne Shung, so this is my spin-off channel. And I mean, part of the reason why I'm doing the interview is because you have a stay away order where you can't talk to Wayne. So I'm sort of taking over all the interviews that he can't do right now. But this kind of just crazy ruling that was handed down in Sonoma County, a case that you were also a part of. But yeah, can you tell me a little bit about what happened with you, because you were a defendant in Sonoma County as well. But give me a little bit of that story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story, but I'll start at the point in time where I was charged, which was October of 2018. And what
Okay.
had happened before that, a couple weeks before, was myself and like a couple, almost 200, maybe 150 other people had gone to this chicken farm in the outskirts of Petaluma, a farm that supplies Purdue and Petaluma poultry, after we'd received like whistleblower reports of horrible conditions inside the facility. And we'd gone there to try to help animals and expose what was happening. And a bunch of us were arrested essentially for being on that property and trying to rescue and help other people rescue those animals. And so we'd all been arrested. We'd been booked on like 2 felonies. It was really surprising because like arguably, okay, maybe they could have arrested me on trespass, but then there was 58 of us in jail for 2 felonies. What ended
Mm.
up happening is we were all released from jail, either on bail or on our own recognizance, and kind of sent home. And then we kind of heard this rumor. I can't even remember where it came from, that most people weren't going to get actually formally charged, but about 6 people were going to get the hammer thrown at them, or whatever that
Mm.
expression is.
The
And we're
book
like,
thrown.
"What?
Yeah.
What is that? What is it?"
Yeah, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
book, bring the hammer down. That's the
Yeah.
thing. The
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
thrown
Yeah.
at them, bringing the hammer down. And so we're like, all right, let's start speculating who those 6 people are going to be. Like, we don't really know. Like, gosh, who
Mm.
are they going to go after? Because like 58 of us had been arrested. And then, yeah, a couple of weeks later, somebody calls me and they're like, "Hey, a letter for you came in the mail from the district attorney of Sonoma County." And I'm like, "I think I'm one of those 6 people." And I was, me and 5 other people. We got this letter saying we were being charged with 7 felonies and 5 misdemeanors for this action, and then retroactively for an action that had happened earlier in 2018 where I wasn't even arrested at that.
Mm.
And that kind of started this 5 year essentially saga of like going to court, going through prelims, like so many court appearances, like all of this stuff. And of course, it was delayed partly because of COVID, but also just because it was an incredibly complicated case. There was a bunch of defendants. We all had our own lawyers, all of that. And it essentially, like, so for context, I am Canadian. I grew up in Canada. I moved to
Mm.
California in 2016, and I'm not a US citizen. And I always kind of knew, like, you know, for me, if a plea deal is offered, that's good. It might be the best thing for the movement for me to take it, because the consequences possibly of being convicted would involve deportation.
Mm.
And like, I'm all for, like, I want to go on trial. I don't think I did anything wrong, but we do all of these things because we think that they're good for the movement. And not that I think I'm that important, but like, it would really suck to be deported and not allowed to like come back to the US and all this kind of stuff. So I did end up getting like a pretty decent offer, and
Mhm.
I took that in January of 2023. And that offer
Mhm.
involved me pleading no contest, which is basically like you're kind of pleading guilty, but you don't have to say it, to misdemeanor trespass. And that's it. And they dropped all of my other charges, and
Mhm.
doing a year of probation. And if I completed all the terms of my probation, then that misdemeanor trespass would actually go away. So I did
Right.
complete my probation, and January of this year, the charge went away. So basically, I have like nothing on my record from 7 felonies, which I think just kind of goes to show that clearly, like, I wasn't this huge threat to public safety. Like, usually, like, people who are getting
Mhm.
7 felony charges are, like, assaulting people, murdering people, I don't know, running a drug ring or something like that, and, they probably don't give them a deal that involves, deferred entry of judgment on 1 misdemeanor trespass, which is, like, the lowest charge you could ever have. It's like, I wouldn't have even been that upset if I'd been like, had that on my record, and they let me go for that, and, I did 100 hours of community service helping people at the food bank, so that
Mhm.
is kind of where I, got out of this case, and I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I ended up being able to testify for
Mhm.
Wayne. There were 6 of us, as I mentioned, who got these original charges, and at the end of the day, only 1 person, Wayne, ended up going to trial. Everybody else either had their charges dropped or took plea deals before,
Yeah.
or in the middle
And
of
then
trial in the case of Priya.
right, and he ended up going to jail for that. Yeah, I will say, and you had mentioned that, you were fully willing to go to jail or go on trial. Had you been deported, that would have been a huge loss, I will say. And I'm not just saying that to butter you up, but I have had multiple people say to me over the years, people in direct action everywhere, that you are kind of the glue that holds
Oh,
DxE together. And I can see that. And I will say too, and we'll talk a little bit about this, but I've had the privilege of working alongside you. And in fact, in Sonoma County, we were roommates for a little while at the Airbnb.
literal
And
roommates, like same bedroom.
yeah, same bedroom, platonic, but
Yeah,
yeah,
different beds.
yeah, different beds. But you are one of the hardest working people that I've ever met. And I would often be going to bed, and you had mentioned that, you were tired hours before. I would like look over and I'd see you still working, sometimes 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever, looking at body cam footage, which by the way, wasn't even your job. You were taking on other work. So I just think you're one of those people that really sets the tone. Like you're a really lead by example person. And I know whenever there was like a down moment, you were like, well, I'm going to go collect signatures. You guys come in with me. And it was kind of infuriating because you were, you, you made me feel lazy sometimes because
Oh,
you
no.
just never stopped. And yeah, I mean, another thing that you were doing when we were all hanging out in Sonoma County, I think you were in the midst of like doing a 100-day run challenge for yourself. Like, were you going to run every day, like 1 mile, right? Is that what?
Yeah, started to yeah, anyway, I started the challenge for myself that I'm
Mm.
gonna run at least 1 mile every day. Um, Often more, but sometimes, like you're tired and you only have time for a mile. But yeah, I'm almost at 2 full years and not missed a single day. So I'm pretty proud of that.
Wow, that is amazing. And
But you
again,
can
it's
do it. It's
infuriating. Yeah, no, stop. Stop it. You
Yeah.
make us all
One
look
thing
bad.
I'll say though is that I think that sometimes, like, I do think that I work really hard, and I think that I'm not like that smart or like that like whatever. Like I think I'm not smart, but I just don't mean like I don't. I think like my one of my biggest strengths is that I can work really hard and then I'm very disciplined. But I
Mhm.
also think that it's not great to set an example where you're always working, because
Mm.
I don't think that that's healthy. And I do think leadership sets an example. So it's not, I do also not work sometimes and I take breaks.
Sometimes during the
You
meetings,
should
right?
too.
Yeah,
What?
because we scheduled this during the chapter meeting actually, and that was kind of funny because I was texting you. I said, tell everybody I said hey, and then
I
Joe
did.
texted me. Yeah, I know. Joe texted me at the end of the meeting, and he said, "Hey, it was really nice of you to say hey to everybody." And I thought that was kind of funny because you
I
were in
also
the
said,
chapter meeting.
Jeremy says hi and he's coming to Convergence.
Well, yeah, you
So
did.
yeah,
You did work
I
that
was
in
like,
there. Yeah.
well, I think I may have said, rumor has it that he's coming to Convergence. So
Oh, okay. Great.
it's
Great.
just a rumor at
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Well, okay. So, like, can we rewind actually? Because even though we've been friends for a while, and I mean, we haven't had like a ton of communication, but I actually don't really know your story other than I know you're Canadian. But what brought you to California in the first place, and how did you get started in direct action everywhere?
Yeah, so I got started in direct action everywhere actually when I was still living in Canada. So
Okay.
I've been vegetarian since I was 10. Didn't really, went vegan quite a bit later. I didn't know anything
Mhm.
about dairy and eggs. I was 10 and it was like 1997. I don't think I knew the word vegan at all until much, much later. But
Well, and why? And why were you vegetarian?
yeah, my best friend at the time, she was raised essentially vegetarian, and we, as most 10-year-olds do, like loved animals. And she, like the way I recall this and the way I say it is like she asked me one day, like, if you love animals so much, why do you eat them?
Mhm.
I don't know if that's like the exact words she said, obviously, but essentially that, like, why do you eat animals if you care about animals so much? And I think the thing that's really amazing about children is we don't have all of these justifications and rationalizations in our head yet. Like, I bet you if somebody had asked me that when I was 16, my answer would have been very different. But I was 10 and I was like, I, I don't know.
Mhm.
And so then I became a vegetarian essentially. Like, there was a couple things. When at the beginning I was a vegetarian who ate hot dogs and chicken or hamburgers and chicken nuggets because I really liked
Mhm.
them. And then like that lasted maybe like a couple months. And then I was actually a vegetarian. And I
Mhm.
was also really lucky that my parents, even though they weren't vegetarian, were very like accommodating and supportive. Obviously, it wasn't really cooking
Mhm.
for myself, but they were like down for it. So again, I think had that piece not been in play, who knows what would have happened. But yeah, so I just was vegetarian and I never ate animals after that. Then I went vegan in 2010. I moved away for 2 years to go to grad school. I moved back to Vancouver, my hometown, in 2013, like finished grad school. And I think the
Mhm.
mentality was kind of like, okay, I'm done my education. I'm moving back to my hometown, like time to like start this new chapter of my life. I want to
Mhm.
make friends that are vegan. Like obviously still had my old friends, but I want to meet other people who are vegan. And that kind of got me connected to a couple people in the Vancouver scene, which then like kind of happening at the same time, DxE was starting in the Bay Area. And I guess like Wayne or Priya, one of the original folks, was recruiting people in other cities to do these protests at Chipotle. And one of the people they recruited was Wilson. And they met Wilson on like some Facebook group for animal rights people. So I don't know if people know Wilson. Wilson's awesome. He's been around DxE basically since the beginning, right? But he was
Mhm.
living in Vancouver at the time, and Wayne had wrangled him into organizing this protest. So I don't even know Wilson, but we have a mutual friend named Darren. Wilson invites Darren. Darren invites me. Before you know it, I'm at like the second ever DxE protest in Vancouver. This was December of 2013 at Chipotle. I didn't know what Chipotle was. There was one Chipotle in all of
Mhm.
Vancouver. It barely made it to Canada. I was like, what's Chipotle? But we're going to protest them. And yeah, that's kind of my first, I would say one of my first animal rights protests. I'd done some like rodeo stuff before, but
Mhm.
that's kind of when I started. I'm like, okay, we have these monthly protests with DxE. I'm getting involved in Vancouver. And then in 2014, DxE folks in the Bay Area hosted the first ever like DxE forum, which is what is now known as the Animal Liberation Conference. But back then, yeah,
Mhm.
DxE forum, very small, because there was not very many people involved in DxE, and small enough that basically anybody who was interested in coming from out of town could be like housed for free. And I'm like, wow, like I get to go to California. I think in my head, like San Francisco, LA, same thing. Like, I don't know. I'm just like, I'm going to
Oh, yeah.
California. Like, also, this is kind of embarrassing, but you said not that many people will watch this. Had this like crush on Darren, right? And Darren was coming, and I'm like, let's go to San Francisco together and we can
Well,
stay
my
for
views
free.
just shot up, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
This is like the real drama. Because it gets more drama. So then
Wait, did
we
you say you had a crush on Darren? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so then
Alright.
by the time then we started dating, and then we had broken up by the time we even went to this
Oh, okay.
conference. But anyway, I find myself in California in 2014 for the first ever DxE forum with like a grand total of maybe like 40 other people. And I was so like blown away by like that's when I like met Wayne and Priya and like Brian and Ronnie and all these people. I'm like, these people are so smart. And at that point, I didn't have like much of a concept of like a theory of change or a strategy. I was still very much in that, like, all you need to do is like, you just have to tell people to go, like, it's so obvious. You just tell people that animals are suffering and you don't need to eat them and that you should go vegan, and then they will go vegan, problem solved, right? But I'd clearly been an activist for 6 months at this point, and vegan at this point for 4 years. Like, it wasn't working. And yeah, so like just blown away by how smart they were, and they had this plan and like inspiring, and we were doing these actions, and I never done a protest with 40 people before. So like that was amazing. And then I met somebody else, another person that I started dating at this conference. So then,
Almira, settle
yeah, I
down
know.
now.
So this was just why it was kind of awkward. So anyway, I go back home, and now I'm in this long distance relationship with Cristobal, actually, who's one of the co-founders of DxE. So 2 years of like long distance going back and forth.
I'm sorry, you froze up a second. Can you repeat that, what you just said?
Yeah, so I ended up in this long distance relationship with Cristobal, who was one of the, going by Chris at the time, one of the co-founders of DxE.
Okay.
So we're like long distance relationship, but like almost 2 years later, it's like, okay, am I moving to California or are you moving to Vancouver? And, frankly, like the decision was made, like I was going to move to California versus like them moving to Vancouver because of the animal rights scene. There's just so much stuff happening that it was kind of hard to justify, but it was a huge, like, to be honest, like a huge sacrifice. I quit my career. I was working as an occupational therapist, which is what I'd gone to school for like 6 years of education, moving away from Canada with healthcare and my family and all of this. So came to California in February of 2016 and have lived here ever since.
Wow, that's a story. I mean, what did your family think when you moved to California? I'm sure they had mixed feelings. Like, they were probably sad to lose you. Yeah.
Like most Canadians, they were afraid I was going to get shot.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
That was their main first fear, was like, you're going to get shot in America. And I was like, I'm probably not going to get shot. I might actually, but most likely not. But yeah, they were really sad.
They were sad. And what did they think about you basically like dropping your career that you had gone to school for so long?
Well, so the original intention when I moved to California was that I would start working as an occupational therapist here. And then I just became, two things happened. One, I started I wouldn't have had to go back to school, but I needed to take a licensing exam. And so I bought like the textbook to study for the US occupational therapy license. And I just got like so the first like third of it was about like Medi-Cal and insurance reimbursements and all this stuff. I was like, this is horrible. Like, when I worked in Canada, I was like working in the public hospitals. I didn't have to deal with any of that. And I was like, this is like not what I want to do. And then also was getting like super, super involved in DxE stuff. And the opportunity came up for me to get funded, like basically paid to receive a fellowship. So I didn't need to have another job. And so like that was really great. And so, yeah, I think like I'm really lucky that my family, which I know is not the situation that a lot of people find themselves in. And I don't think there's like anything that I did that I'm like this great activist. And that's why my parents are so understanding. I think they're just really awesome people. They're just like down. I think they are like happy that I'm doing something that I care a lot about. And that I think like at first they were like, who are these people like that are stealing away my daughter? But then they came, like the first time they came to visit me in California was 2016. Okay. And they met everybody and they're like, oh my God, like we're really happy actually. Like these people are amazing and I totally get it. And I'm really happy that you are surrounded by really awesome people. So and they've been to conferences and stuff and they've been to open rescues and done
that's amazing.
So
wow.
So they're animal rights people. They were on the green team, but
Okay. Yeah. So we had 11 witnesses in Sonoma County for that trial, I believe. And so I hope I'm not misremembering, but aren't you the witness that part of your story as a young person was you and your friend were searching for missing animals in your neighborhood?
Yeah, that was the person who made me vegetarian. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Tell us about
we
that.
were horribly unsuccessful.
Well, I found that to be a really endearing story that I was really I can't remember if we told the jury that story or not, but I was like, people are trying to paint us as these extremists. And
Mhm.
then you have the lead organizer of Direct Action Everywhere talking about how she and her friend used to just go around the neighborhood trying to find people's missing pets. And I think it's a really hard thing to paint you as an extremist at that point. But yeah, tell me about, I know you weren't successful, but tell me about that.
Yeah, I think this is just like something we did. I don't know, like you're 10 wandering around our neighborhood and then we'd like see missing cat posters and we're like, we're gonna find this cat.
Hmm.
To be honest, like, did we look for that cat for more than 10 minutes? I don't know. But like the intention
Oh
was
no.
definitely there. And we
Yeah,
had a 0% success rate of ever reuniting anybody with their companion animals, but we tried.
that's awesome. Yeah, so you were an animal lover basically back in the day. Did you grow up with cats or dogs?
No, and well, not originally. I
Mhm.
always wanted a dog, like, so badly.
Oh.
I or, like, any companion animal, like, mostly a dog. It's really
Mhm.
actually sad, like, my first companion animal were snails that I, like,
Oh.
probably, like, took away from their habitat and
Oh.
not good, but
Mhm.
again, like, the intention was good. I, like,
Yeah.
took them from probably outside in our yard and put them in this giant jar, and then they had, like, a million babies, and then I let them all go. But yeah, Sammy and Slimy were their names, my
Sammy and
snails.
Slimy.
Yeah. But
Nice.
yeah, my parents were always like, "No" to the dog. I wrote, like I wrote, like, a column in the SPCA's newsletter. It was probably, like, the children's newsletter. I don't think they would, like, let me write that in the, like, actual newsletter about, like, dogs I know. I
Mhm.
don't know, it would be, like, neighborhood dogs, and I'd write about them. But yeah, never got a dog, and then when I was maybe yeah, I don't know when I don't even know if I was vegetarian yet, but it was around the same time actually. Maybe I wasn't even vegetarian. Somewhere between me being like 8 and 11 or something,
Mhm.
we found kittens in our treehouse. So
Hmm.
there had obviously been like some mom. I don't think she was feral. I think she must have been a stray who'd given birth to kittens in our treehouse,
Mhm.
and we took in the kittens and like set a humane trap for her with the help of somebody, and then got her, and then we had the mom and 3 kittens in our house for a really long time until they were like weaned. And of course, my brother and I were like, please let us keep a kitten,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
my parents were like, okay, one. And then, of course, we didn't agree on which kitten to keep. So then we got two. And so we adopted out one of the kittens and the mom. And then this was, to date myself, this is around, you must know the movie Space Jam.
Oh, yeah, Space
Yeah,
Jam.
so Space Jam was extremely popular, so the kittens were all named after Space Jam characters, and my cat was MJ, and my brother's cat was Bugs, like Bugs Bunny.
Oh,
So, yeah,
okay, good.
we had MJ
Yeah.
and Bugs, and they weren't dogs, but I was really happy they were cats. And they lived for
You
a really long time. Neither of them are alive anymore, but,
Mhm.
that was
That was a
mid-90s.
long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think Slimy was, offended that he had a sort of a derogatory name, or do you consider Slimy to be a derogatory name even though
Yeah, no, I think he was probably offended he had to live in a jar. But
poor Slimy,
I would, like, take them out and, like, race them. I don't know. I was maybe
you
a
were
really
raising
weird
them? Yeah.
I was yeah,
Well
yeah.
well, you did kind of speed over the story of how you got involved in DxE, and, I'm just curious how you were vegetarian, then you were vegan, and it sounded like you started to get more and more into animal rights, and obviously you dropped your career for that. So what was there a specific moment, or was there a series of moments that kind of made you more about, like, I really have to do something about this?
Yeah, like, honestly, not really. Like, I think if I had to pick one, like, very defining moment, it was the conference in 2014. Like, that's kind
Mhm.
of where I was like, "Okay, like, there's a strategy for this, like, this isn't some pipe dream that's never gonna happen. Like, we can do more than just, like, me trying to get, like, my family and friends to go vegan."
Mhm.
So definitely that, but that wasn't like at that point, I wasn't like, all right, like I'm gonna go like move to California. I was just like, cool, I'm inspired,
Mhm.
I'm like gonna come back to Vancouver and like really want to organize things and like build up the Vancouver chapter, which I did, obviously not alone.
Mhm.
Like Wilson was a big part of that. He eventually moved to California, and everything. But yeah, I think um, if I had to pick a moment, it would have been that. And
Mhm.
I it's interesting, like, obviously I did love animals, or I do love animals a lot as a kid, but I'm not really one of those people who like constant like actually don't have like I don't think I'm a huge animal lover. It's a very like rational thing for me. Like animals should not be abused. People
Interesting.
like don't like they want to like go grow up and like have a sanctuary. Like
Mhm.
absolutely not. I'm so grateful for the people who want to run sanctuaries and do, because that sounds like a nightmare to me.
Oh
Um,
god, it is.
and
I
it just
mean,
like I mean, I think a lot of people who say they want to run a sanctuary, I'm like, have you ever been to one for more than 3 hours? Because it's like the most amount of work. Like you say, I'm hardworking. Like no, not compared to people who run sanctuaries. Like most hardworking people in the world. But yeah, I don't have this like intense like connection to animals where I'm like, I always need to be around them. I can't imagine my life without them. Like,
mhm, mhm. Yeah, I think I'm actually the same way. I mean, I would consider myself an animal lover. Like, I go to this place all the time where there's dogs and I can play with dogs and I love them and I have a connection with them. But yeah, I don't have a companion animal. I just sort of think about that. I would rather, like I just think about the amount of time that they would have to spend alone. So it's not, it's a practical reason, but it's also just not some like intense need that I have to be around an animal. Which is a good point, I think, because people who are like animal rights people don't necessarily have to be animal lovers. And in fact, you could even dislike animals and still see the
yeah.
wrong for what it is. But so you were already doing activism when you went to the conference, obviously. And what was it that made you start to want to do animal activism?
I think it was honestly mostly just wanting to find vegan friends. So when
Mm,
I went vegan, I didn't know a single other person who was vegan. And
mhm,
I still didn't for like a really long time. And then I had one friend who it was like my first like successful conversion, which wasn't even like a real like if only it was so easy.
mhm,
We were roommate or like housemates when I was going to grad school. And I was just like, I'm happy to share groceries with you. I'm not splitting like animal products with you though. I'm not going to spend my money on that. And he was like, oh, that's fine. I'll be vegetarian in the house. And I was like, oh, great. And then like a couple months later, he's like, I'm just gonna go vegan. I was like, oh
mm,
my God, this is great. But other than that, like
nice.
I didn't know anybody else really who was vegan. And so I think I just mostly wanted to find vegan friends. And
Yeah,
then
you
having
wanted some
found them, it's
community.
like, yeah, people ended up like
Mhm.
doing activism. And so I just kind of like
Interesting.
joined. Yeah.
Were you someone who took to activism naturally, or was it were you like an introvert, an extrovert? Did you find it hard?
Um, I I think I'm more introverted than extroverted, but like not a lot. Like I'm usually like pretty 50-50 on those tests. I am definitely somebody who likes bossing people around, telling people what to do. I was like that child.
Power trip. Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean, like not like even from like a I don't know, just like there's a group project, I'm gonna be in charge of it. Like I was
Mm,
like the neighborhood child, like all the kids in the neighborhood, like I was like organizing them. I
mm.
actually, when I was very young, I made myself a T-shirt that I wrote on with Sharpie. And I wrote like, "My name is Almira and I'm boss." So I think it's just
That's
like, okay, here's
amazing.
I don't know.
You
Um,
should recreate that shirt and
no, that's
wear that.
horrible.
No,
Like
that would be
it's like
amazing.
self-appointed. Yeah, so I think I've always been like that kind of like
So you were a
leadery
natural leader. Yeah.
or just like yeah, wanting to be
Mm,
coordinating, organizing things, loved organizing things.
yeah.
Other fun story from my childhood, asked for a like accordion, like file folder, like ABCD type folder
Mm,
for Christmas when I was like probably 12. I don't know what kind of 12-year-old wants an organizational system for Christmas, but that was me. Uh, so yeah, I guess like in that sense, yes. And again, like my parents weren't like strong, like they weren't like activists all the time, but like we went to like peace marches against the war when I was a kid and stuff. So it's like a little bit in my DNA. I like being like loud. My dad always called me a shit disturber. So I think, or just like, I was like very stubborn. So just like some of my personality traits, I think, align well with being an activist.
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, one of your strengths is definitely organizational skills. And yeah, I do see that leadership in you. I mean, well, obviously you're the lead organizer of DxE, but yeah, you do have a sort of a take charge mentality, in a good way. I mean, you know,
I'm sure it can
yeah,
sometimes be very annoying too. I probably was also a really annoying child.
you might have been,
Yeah.
that T-shirt might have,
Yeah. Probably a really annoying adult too, but that's fine.
no, I don't think so. I think you're good. Yeah. So, okay, that's interesting. So, I wonder when you were at ALC, or what it was called back then. I'm guessing that you were already starting to make an impression on people. Well, like you are now the lead organizer of Direct Action Everywhere, and have been for quite a while, right? Like at least when was it? 2019? Is
Yeah,
that
it's
right?
been almost 5 years.
Yeah, 2019. Okay, so um, and how did that happen? That must be an
Mhm.
interesting story too, because yeah, to end up the head of DxE, this big network of activist groups.
Yeah, well, like officially how it happened is like it's an elected position, but it's like a little
Mhm.
bit more to it than that. I mean, first when DXE started, it wasn't an elected position. Like DXE was like very ragtag. I mean, it is still grassroots, but
Mhm.
um, like not as much structure. I mean, it's small, and basically back in the day, like anybody who was kind of around was part of like the leadership team because there wasn't that many people. Then, progressively as it grows, you do need to have a little bit more structure. And I think maybe some people think like, oh, grassroots means there's like no hierarchy, no structure, but that's totally not true. I think obviously
Mhm.
we want people to be autonomous, and it's not like a dictatorship. It's certainly not a cult, as some people say, but there is a hierarchy. And in 20, I want to say 2017, maybe 2018. I honestly can't remember the exact year, but around that time, the like election process and like the leadership team structure was like formalized. And
Mhm.
essentially that is that like our chapter has a 5-person leadership team and lead organizer and 4 additional core members, and those are elected by people in our chapter. And that also serves as kind of like the global steering committee for the other chapters. Now, if there's another chapter out there that eventually like grows to have the capacity and like the kind of um, I guess like sustainability almost as the Bay Area, then like they'll also be part of the global steering committee. That hasn't really happened yet.
Mhm.
So yeah, Wayne, like, and I think part of this is like Wayne had always been acting as like that lead organizer thing, but I think something that can happen in grassroots groups is like a lot of resentment around power when power isn't like clearly defined, because people
Mhm.
always do have power. But then if you're like, oh, we're all the same, then but like clearly it's not, like that can be like really negative. And I think having like clearly defined roles and like having an understanding of like, yes, this person actually does have more power in this scenario, but this is like how that's organized and how that's held accountable, and all of that is helpful. So all of that got formalized. Wayne was elected as lead organizer, and we have these elections every 2 years. And so he was also elected again. Yeah, this makes sense, in 2018, and was going to
Mhm.
serve the term until 2020. Our elections are on February. But I think for multiple reasons, I mean, 2018 was a really intense year for DxE, and so was 2019 in many ways. Like that's when, we've been doing open rescues for years, no
Mhm.
consequences or very few consequences. And then 2018, um, good and bad, like shit hit the fan, like felt like every month
Mhm.
we were getting a whole new set of felony charges. I think
Yeah.
also a lot of like infighting and conflict led,
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he would say the same, led Wayne to feel like I'm totally burnt out on this role. And also like it's brought me to a point where I don't feel effective in the role anymore either. And
Yeah.
so he, like, I remember like it must have been like summer or like late summer of 2019. He's like, hey, Almira, like, we go for a walk? Like, I want to tell you something. I'm like, oh my God, like, what is this going to be?
Yeah.
Like, what have we done? And then he was like, I don't want to be lead organizer anymore. And I want you to take over until like, the next election cycle in 2020. And I was like, oh my God, so much worse than I thought what it was going to be. I would much rather like you tell me I've done something horribly wrong. Yeah, so that was really
Yeah.
terrifying. And yeah, so but I was like, okay, sure. So I think maybe like a month or two of like transition stuff. And then yeah,
Mhm.
September 1st of 2019, I like, officially took over. First day of me being lead organizer. We were live streaming somebody else's action. They were in Europe somewhere, live streaming an open rescue on our Facebook page, and somebody literally got shot at with a gun. And
Wow.
the glass of their car exploded and they were bleeding. I'm like, this is my first day. All right,
Whoa.
this is great. Terrible, actually. It got better from there, but it was like really hard. I felt like I had
Mhm.
never felt so like insecure in my abilities and like, yeah, no idea what I was doing, so stressed out all the
Oh my
time.
God, I can only imagine.
Yeah. And I felt like I finally like 6 months in, kind of got the hang of it. And that's
Mhm.
basically essentially when COVID hit. So as soon as I was like, okay, I got this, it's like pandemic, everything you think you know about organizing is like gone. And yeah, so that was basically the start.
What got you through those first few months of feeling so insecure?
I don't know, probably a
You
lot of
just
complaining, crying, coffee. I
you
don't
just
know.
rolled with it, yeah.
Yeah, like imposter syndrome like was intense,
Yeah.
but
I could only imagine how intense that discussion was with Wayne and just like feeling like, I'm sure you probably felt some excitement too, like, oh my God, like this is, what an opportunity. But was there any of that, or was it more like, holy crap, like,
yeah, I mean, I don't wanna say like, "Oh, I hate it and I don't want this role." Like, no,
right.
like so but I don't know if I like, yeah, I don't know about excitement. I mean, I guess I feel really, um I feel like honored that people
Mhm.
think I'm like a decent fit for it. I think I will be very happy when somebody else is interested in taking on this role too. And I think like leadership transition is really good.
Mm.
But yes, I don't know if I would say excited. Maybe a little bit, but
Well,
yeah.
you've been in the role now for 5 years, and so you said like about 6 months in, you started to sort of get the hang of it. Then COVID hits, and I mean, I can't speak for everybody in DXE. I don't know everybody in DXE, but at least from my perspective, people seem like they are pretty happy with you in the role. So, I mean, I know that DXE has had its ups and downs, it's had its controversies, but it seems to be like the core group of people seem to think you're the right person for the job, and I would agree with that. I mean, from my experience with you, what did Wayne say to you, in terms of did you say to him, "Why me?" Because I've
Mm.
said to him, like, "Why me?" Like, when you brought me into the legal team, I'm like, "Why?"
Um, no, honestly, like not really. And like I don't want this to yeah, I don't know. I don't want this to come across as like rude or like egotistical, but I think like it's kind of one of those things where it's like I think that if people were like it's not going to be Wayne, it's going to be Almira, not because I
Mhm,
think that other people don't have like a lot of leadership qualities, but I think at that point I probably knew the most about like all the different parts of DXE and
mm,
had like some of the baseline like organizational like okay, like I can handle this skills to
mhm,
like guide people in the same way that like I think maybe I'm wrong. I think like it's kind of maybe pretty obvious to people. Like if I were just incapacitated for whatever reason, like Cassie would step up. It's just kind of one of those things where like
mhm,
naturally, like
mhm.
she's gonna be the one.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
Not that I don't think other people have like a million other things. And I also, I mean, I think it's obvious. I don't want to like say something that's like, but in case
Well
people are wondering, I'm like very much not doing this alone. There's
well,
like a ton of other people who make this possible, and I would absolutely not be able to do. most like lead DxE. We didn't have like an incredible number of people who were doing that because you said, oh yeah, it's this huge network with all these chapters. And Michelle handles that. Like,
Yeah.
she's the coordinator of that, and like all the press, and I don't do that. And all the community events, and I don't do that. And I don't organize the protests, and I don't run our tech, and I don't do our social media.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who do that and make that possible.
You did bring up a good point about sanctuary owners, because they work really, really hard. But I would say that, Wayne Sheng, you, Cassie, are some of the hardest working people that I've ever met. And that's after spending 15 years at NPR, different radio stations. So I've met hardworking people, and I'm not saying that they don't work hard over there, but yeah, it makes sense. I'm guessing that probably you were doing a lot of the roles that you kind of stepped into already at that point. Is that why you say it kind of makes sense? You were sort of like, in some ways, almost acting in that role already.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that is needed in this role is like being able to know like a lot of what's going on in all these other teams and like bring them
Mhm,
together and like synthesize it. It's like this is where we're going, and just
mhm.
having a good understanding of all of the pieces. And I think I had that, as opposed to somebody who's like really specialized in one piece, but maybe like can't see the big picture.
Mhm. So in Sonoma County, you had to do this plea deal. So what other have you been charged in other cases as well?
Yeah, the only other time I've been arrested and charged was, like, the most ridiculous thing.
Mm,
It was in November of 2022.
mhm,
Yeah. Zoe was doing a video, for social media where she was well, like we had done an investigation of a turkey farm that supplied to Safeway, and we were
mhm,
doing like a protest at Safeway. Well, I wasn't even doing the protest. Zoe was doing the protest. She was dumping like washable fake blood on the floor of a Safeway in Berkeley, and I was filming it. And I got a like thing happened, filmed the protest, left the Safeway, the end. I'm walking to go to Trader Joe's to buy groceries. And I'm like, God, these cop cars are following me. Like, I'm just gonna like dip off this main street. Um, could be just weird. I'm just getting like a weird feeling about it. And like they
mhm.
follow me, and I'm like, I think calling. I'm like, I think I'm about to get arrested. Just FYI, this is where I am. Yeah. So then I got arrested on 2 felonies for
Wow.
filming Zoe dumping washable fake blood on the floor of a Safeway, and was thrown in jail in Berkeley and charged. My bail was $40,000. And I had to get out of jail because I had a court appearance in Sonoma County that I was like, I'm going to miss it if I don't get out of jail. So that was really stupid. And I like just was like, I'm not gonna like fight. This is not like interesting like an open rescue case. We're gonna like fight this, even though I really think that was not a thing that I should have been arrested and convicted of. But again, I got like an even better deal. Like I got a diversion, which means you just like I had to do 10 hours of community service and be on probation for 6 months, and they overlapped with my Sonoma probation. So I did
Oh.
that, and that case is done now. But
Oh,
just
okay.
absurd, absurd.
What were the felonies?
Felony vandalism and felony conspiracy to commit vandalism.
Wow, they're really throwing these conspiracy
Yeah,
charges at activists.
yeah,
Seems to be like the new thing. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and they got a
Um,
search warrant for my phone, and they, like, went through all my phone like, it was really ridiculous for and, like,
wow.
cruelty. Zoe, on the other
Wow.
hand, did not get arrested.
That's interesting. And
Yeah.
now Zoe is facing charges
Yeah,
for
she's got her own thing now. She got one freebie.
yeah. Well, people in DxE, Wayne, you, many other people, I mean, Cassie, a lot of people, people are facing legal consequences. And how do you how do you prepare for that? And you know, I know that in DxE there's basically a support network, and everybody's going to be taken care of. But how do you prepare when um and also just I guess like it seems like in activism all around the country, and people are just scared of getting arrested. So how do you even prepare
Mhm.
people mentally for that?
Yeah, I think I mean, getting arrested is obviously, like, not fun and it's unpleasant and you lose so many of your freedoms and all of that. And also I'm like white and like privileged in many ways. But I think like it's really not that scary. Like maybe it's not as scary as for at least for again, I'm just speaking from my own experience as it's meant like put out to be maybe. And I think one thing that we have done is a lot of training where people really know like this is what you're going to expect and people who've been through it are talking you through it like this is what they're going to ask you. This is like, you know, and so you just kind of like know what you're getting yourself into. And I think that really helps. And I will also say that the first time I was arrested with like all those people, like you are with a bunch of people. So it's like actually kind of fun because you're in jail with all your friends and like you just did this thing. That's not the same. That's not to say like once you're in there for a really long time, if you were convicted, like I don't think Wayne was having any fun in jail. You know, you're alone and you're in there for not like 12 hours or something. But I really think that like education, knowing what you're in for, like really makes it feel like, okay, yeah, it's going to be cold. It's going to be boring. The lights are going to be on. You're not going to be able to lie down. You'll get through it. And then I just think about how, like, if you're in a position, like some people have children or they have like whatever their status, like, or they maybe have like a disability or a medical condition where it's like really bad for them to be in jail. If you don't have one of those things, like you have this privilege. And we know that like all these other movements have relied on civil disobedience. Like I don't know of any other movement that has been successful without people doing that. And so it's just like, sometimes I get frustrated when people don't treat the animal rights movement as a social justice movement. Of course, it's unique. Of course, there are things about it that make it different, but like ultimately it is the same. It's like this oppressed group of people who are like fighting via proxy for like basic rights and recognition, which is all these other social movements. So we should do what other people have done successfully in the past, like not what the vegans are doing that's not working. And that involves civil disobedience. And I think, yeah, so like sometimes the consequences are bad, but I think most of the time they're not. And then I think we look at even Wayne, like Wayne went into Sonoma alone as a 2-time convicted felon already. And the prosecutor and the judge hated his guts. And he was convicted of a felony, and all he got was 42 days in jail. And I'm sure those 42 days sucked, but like you can do them. You know, like I think he will tell you that he does not regret it and that he like, and it was so worth it. I think from a movement perspective and all of that, like, and that's the worst that they're going to do right now. So yeah, I think, people should know what they're getting themselves into. And we always say like, make your arrests count. Like if somebody had told me like filming this protest would result in me getting arrested, I've been like, that's not worth it.
Yeah.
Rescuing chickens from a factory farm, totally worth it. Getting that media attention, totally worth it. Going to Ridgeland, like the dog breeding, which I didn't do, but like other people did, like that stuff is worth it. Make those arrests count, but like do that. If you know, and I think if we just have more and more people participating in this stuff, knowing what they're getting into, it'll make it better. Also, side note, should I turn the light on because it's getting dark? Or is
yeah, sure. I was noticing it was getting a little dark.
Just because the sun is setting.
Yeah. While you're doing that, let me mention, because you mentioned a disability. Like, I mean, Zoe, that was an issue with Zoe because Zoe's diabetic and she was in jail and she needed to be bailed out. So you bring up a good point that people who are, don't have that complication, it's not like they are obligated to do anything, but you're going to be in a better position. I don't understand, and I don't know if you know the answer to this. Why did someone like Lauren Gazzola do like 5-6 years in prison and Wayne did 42 days? I don't understand why there's that disparity.
I don't actually know. I mean, I think there's theories but I think one of the things for people who don't know, Lauren Gazzola was like part of like the Shack 7. They were Stop Huntington Animal Cruelty. This was a group of people who were essentially running a website and posting like action reports from people all around the country who were taking action. This is a very decentralized campaign against Huntington Life Sciences, which is this horrible animal testing facility.
Mhm.
And they would post anything. There were incidents that they did not participate in themselves, but were violent or like had threats of violence. I don't think anybody was
Mhm.
ever harmed. I don't quote me on that. I mean, there's certainly no one was ever like killed, but I do think
Mhm.
there was like a bomb threat or even a real bomb at some point, and I think they posted that on their website. Again, not as even endorsing it to the extent. I mean, you're endorsing
Mhm.
it kind of when you put it on your website, but not like we did it or whatever. And so I do think that like the violence
Yeah.
maybe is the thing that crossed that threshold. And I'm not saying like this couldn't happen to us. I think like
Mhm.
it totally could, and I'm sure that that
Yeah.
freaking like was horrible. And I don't want to at all discount probably how traumatizing that would be. But I also think people are in the animal rights movement are going to have to go to prison for a really long time in this movement. I don't see a world in which we like achieve what we want and that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I just bring that up. Yeah, Wayne has talked to me about, yeah, how, as far as open rescues go, I believe he served the longest time, which was only 42 days. But
I don't think that's
I
true. I think
was
Adam
that not right?
Durand served. I think Adam
Was that
Durand
right?
served.
Like 60
I
days, maybe something like, yeah, I
I
don't know.
think he got a 1-year sentence, but I'm not
Oh,
sure if maybe he just served 6 months. I don't know, but
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he got the most.
Yeah. Well, I just bring it up. I don't want to give people like a false sense of like, yeah, nobody will ever do jail time, that sort of thing, if people are doing animal rights activism, especially effective animal rights activism. And I mean, I think that's one of the points is that, I have a friend who brings it up a lot that, the more pushback you get is, probably the more effective you're being because yeah, if you want to stay quiet and do nothing, then yeah, nothing bad will ever happen. But I think it is important to demystify jail, demystify getting arrested because um, the the famous ALF activist Rod Coronado, kind of famously in his books, has mentioned that you know uh, getting arrested or jail is basically like a trip to the DMV for activists. It's something that you have to do. I kind of like that quote.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just important that people not build this up into something that it isn't. I would say that for someone like Wayne, more so than the jail time, the consequence of not being able to talk to you or Priya or Cassie has been worse of a punishment. So there are obviously consequences that go beyond
Yeah.
jail, but yeah, and it can be very expensive, but that's where DxE comes in and you have lawyers and you help each other out. I mean, numerous people have faced charges in DxE and yeah, so it's just important that people have that kind of support basically.
Mhm. I
Um
mean, DxP activists have
yeah.
rescued hundreds of animals, chained themselves to all sorts of things, shut down
Mhm.
slaughterhouses, and the only person who has ever spent more than a couple nights in jail awaiting their bail hearing is Wayne. Like he's
Yeah,
the only
that's
person who's been like convicted and sentenced
right.
to
Mhm.
jail, and that was 42 days. Um, so I think it could. I will be shocked if that's the longest sentence anybody ever gets in DxE. But it's like
Mhm.
I think the amount of even like yeah, and not talking to Wayne sucks, and I'm sure it's way worse for him because he's got the whole list of 14 people, and I just have Wayne.
Mhm.
But even that, like that creates so much outrage in people. Like when I tell
Yeah.
like my like just like unrelated people, like I can't talk to this person, like a court order doesn't want me to talk to this person, like that to them is like, this is ridiculous. Like why are these people so intent on stopping these people from talking together because they rescued animals? Like I was just
Yeah.
hanging out with my friend from Vancouver who was visiting, who's like not an animal rights person. And he's just like, but like you didn't even like do anything wrong.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I'm like, I know. So it's just like the average person, and okay, he's like better than average, obviously, but it's just ridiculous. And I think that's like part of why these arrests and especially for open rescue is so powerful, right? Like the moral
Mhm.
outrage if people are trying to help animals and you're sending them to jail does not
Mhm.
look good on the prosecutor or the judge.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I don't think people are really breaking the law. I think there's pretty strong, it's just an interpretation of the law that unfortunately lawyers and judges and prosecutors are interpreting the law in a way that's favorable to the industry because they're often beholden to the industry. And I mean, just to like face the facts, like most of these people are just eating animals and they don't want to just face that basic conundrum that they don't want have to deal with the moral question of what they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Mhm.
um, well, so you've been involved in DxE for a really long time. I've only been an activist for about 6 years and a vegan for 6 years. And when I got started, DxE was sort of known as doing sort of these disruptive actions, a lot of like kind of loud disruptions in restaurants and that sort of thing. And I've witnessed DxE evolve over that time into doing more sort of open rescues, but they haven't stopped, with like disruptive activism. But how would you say DxE has evolved, and how would you like it to evolve, and how much have you been a part of that?
Mhm. Yeah, I think, like, sometimes I use the word, like, mature, like, we've matured, but I don't really like that because I don't think that, like, I think that those early day grocery store disruptions were, like, so important. Not even, and, if you're, I think sometimes people look at those and they're like, well, that's not going to help anybody go vegan. I'm like, correct. And that was not the goal. So,
Mm,
like, I think they were so important for building activist identity and training people and encouraging people who are already like got that feel like already like on board, but just like needed that like, wow, I can go and like speak my truth in a grocery store. Like, so that was really important. And we got like a ton of people plugged in. And that's kind of like how we launched. And part of me is like, I'm torn. I'm like, should we do we keep doing those things? Because I think that that was so important for, like, the new activists these days. I'm like, "But you
mhm,
haven't yelled in a Whole Foods yet. You don't even know what you're missing. Like, it's so important that you do that." Um, and I also think, like, we didn't have, like, an ask that was, like, like, it wasn't, like, a real campaign where it was, like, this, like, very
mhm,
specific goal that we could or couldn't achieve. Like, of course, there was a overall ask, but it wasn't like, okay, we have this piece of legislation or whatever. So I think like one of the things that definitely has been an evolution is a focus like more on like very specific campaigns with specific goals.
mhm,
And I think that that's good. I
mhm,
think though we have to remember that ultimately DxE's theory of change is about building a mass movement for like a very kind of more future ambitious goal. And if our short term goals are not helping us mobilize more people, then it doesn't actually matter if we achieve them because it's like quite
mhm.
small potatoes. Like, really, what we're trying to do is mobilize. So, yeah, I think to an extent, I've been a part of that, but also I just think you can't just do the same thing over, or I don't believe you should do the same thing over and over again. And I think it
Mhm.
was like a natural change. And I'm nostalgic for it. I miss
All right.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I'm open to the idea that it was not a good evolution to move away from just doing more of those sorts of things,
Mm,
but I also, like, do mostly think that it was good. So we're right now doing a lot more legislative stuff or, like, political stuff where we have specific policy goals that we're working on.
mhm,
Our open rescues or investigations are, I would say, like, more like, they were always a little bit targeted, but sometimes they were a
mhm,
bit random. Certainly more targeted now with, like, very specific focus or whatever. I think our campaigning around them is a lot more sophisticated, including, like, reporting things to authorities in advance and all that kind of stuff.
mhm.
So, yeah, what's after that? I have no idea. I do not know what we're gonna do after November, which is when the election is. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the next evolution is, and I think sometimes it's important to have, well, not sometimes. I think, DXE has this roadmap. It's We have this end goal, and I think that's really important. We need to know where we're going and have some, like, general markers along the way.
Mhm,
But one thing that COVID has taught me, and I think a lot of people, is not to get too attached to things that are like a year or two out. Like, we have this general picture of where we're going, I am not going to sit down and write you a detailed 5-year plan because I have no freaking idea what's going to happen in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Like, so like, you know, we've
Mhm.
got our thing and we know where we're going and we're going in that right direction. And when we're done this thing, we will have a strategy session and we will figure out the next thing. And of course, it's like part of this general strategy, but this idea that like you're going to have a plan for what you're doing in 2029 right now, I think is like
Mm.
maybe not grounded in the reality of what kind of world we're living in
Yeah,
right now.
things
We're
change
like, it's nuts
dramatically.
out there.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, for instance, like what happens in November could really dramatically change your direction. I mean, so the first time when I came out to California to be involved in DxE and basically just to see what was going on with the press team, one of the things that we did was to drive to Sacramento because at that time, I believe there was a bill on the table to ban factory farming statewide. Um, and now there's more of a local effort in Berkeley and in Sonoma County. So, I mean, during the trial, we were using the trial as kind of a launch pad for collecting signatures for this ballot initiative. DxE, well, I shouldn't say just DxE. It was like a coalition of groups that were gathering signatures, and they collected way more than they needed, got on the ballot. And so, yeah, we're heading towards a November election for Sonoma County voters where they could ban CAFOs. Um, so tell me a little bit about that effort because I was involved during the trial, but since then you guys have just plowed on ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, so you mentioned that bill in Sacramento. So it wasn't a factory farm ban. It was a moratorium on new
Mm,
animal farms.
right,
So a
right.
pretty, what I think, very low bar ask. It's like, hey, let's
Mhm.
not dig the hole deeper. Let's
Yeah.
not make the problem worse. We're not even
Mhm.
talking about doing anything with the farms that exist. Let's just not make the problem worse. But that is just way too radical of a ask for a legislature that is very captured by animal ag. I
Yeah.
don't mean to say it's like corrupt in the sense of like animal ag is allowed to donate to them and they do. I don't think there's like
Mhm.
shady things necessarily happening in the background.
I do.
Like there might be, but it's like even if there wasn't, they're just like getting money from the Farm Bureau and
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. So
The shadiness is like above board,
right,
basically. I
it's
mean, yeah,
legal.
yeah.
Like yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just like whatever, ridiculous. I did not think that that bill would pass. You know, I wasn't
Mhm.
expecting it to pass. I was expecting there to be at least a vote. I wanted
Mhm.
there to be a vote, and I wanted people to have to go on record saying, "I want more factory farms." Right? That's what a
Mhm.
no vote would mean. But what I think is like a complete like I just think this like should be not allowed. Like I think this should be illegal. Like you can just not like the chair of committees can just not bring things to a vote.
Mhm.
A legislator can introduce a bill and then depending on what the bill is, it goes to like the relevant committee. So this went to the agriculture committee. Obviously it was going to fail in there. But then the chair of the agriculture committee, Assembly member Robert Revis, just was like, I'm just
Mhm.
not going to bring this up. How is that allowed?
I know.
Like, that is fucking ridiculous. Like, you can vote no on it. That's fine.
Mhm.
Like, it's not fine, but like, whatever. You're an elected official. You can vote yes or no or abstain, but you can't just like not put things to a vote. Anyway, so that just like any faith, like we didn't have a lot, but any faith
Mhm.
in that system was just like gone. Completely absurd. And that's kind of, you know, our friends at Pax Fauna slash Pro Animal Future, Eva and
Yeah.
Aiden, who are like old school DxE people, you know, doing a lot of research on this ballot measure. Obviously, ballot measures aren't new. Prop 2 and Prop 12 in California were like the big animal welfare ones in 2008 and 2018, or maybe 2012, whatever. Prop 12 was in 2018. But like, so we're like, okay, this is a way for, in a sense, us to like take this power back a little bit and at least put it to the people. So
Mhm.
we had been thinking about doing a ballot measure for a long time, but it's really scary. It's like so much work. It's so complicated.
Mhm.
Once you're in it, like that's it. You have to be in it. You're committed. So
Mhm.
like we're like hemming and hawing, but finally we're like, all right, let's freaking do this. So
Mhm.
we spent a long time drafting the bill, like figuring out how the hell you do it. We kind of did that test run in Berkeley where we collected signatures for the Berkeley one. And in September, basically right as the trial started, we started the signature collection effort. Now, every state's different. California, you get 6 months. So we had 6 months to collect all the signatures. We did. We shot way over because we were so nervous that we weren't going to get enough because, like, you know, people sign and they sign twice and then it doesn't count, all these sorts of things. But yeah, in March of this year, we found out we qualified. So this is the first time ever that a county is going to vote to end factory farming, which is amazing. And it's been like full on campaign mode ever since. I have heard from multiple people, and like things that are happening make me believe this is true. Like, there has not been a ballot measure that's this controversial ever in Sonoma County history. They changed the entire rules on when they assign letters. So like you can see I'm rocking I was out door knocking today. I didn't put this on just for the interview. I'm still wearing the same sweaty shirt. I was out in like 100-degree heat door knocking. But yeah, we usually don't find out what you are, like measure J, measure L, whatever, until August. But the opposition was like so ready to go to fight this that they were like, we want a letter early. So the entire county changed their rules. We got this letter early. All of these things, like there's already a ton of campaigning, yes and no. We've been knocking on doors and all of that. And it's basically just like go, go, go until November 5th.
Yeah.
Or even really actually more like October 7th when the mail-in ballots start, because people are voting early a lot these days. And, you know, I don't think our chances of winning are zero. So that means we've got a shot. And if we do, I think it would be like extremely transformative if we win this. I think like, yeah, I don't want to sound egotistical, but I think if we win this, it could really change the U.S. animal rights movement.
It could. Like, it would be a monumental moment. And yeah, the chances aren't zero. I don't know what the chances are, but you know, you're up against it. They're not
That's about as good. That's as much as I'll say.
Yeah, you shouldn't jinx it by, you know, even if the effort were unsuccessful, though, it's still forcing a conversation. I mean, there's already been good press about it. I mean, I was really proud of the press team, for getting that story in Politico that was basically like, you know, animal rights has come to, I don't know, they use some wine.
America's Provence or something.
Yeah, I didn't know how to go about anyway. But yeah, so it's already been successful in that sense. Yeah, the political, you talked about how corrupt the political system is and just how crappy it is. I spent a long time covering state politics in North Carolina. And, you know, I'm sure this is the case in other states too. Sometimes they could just like literally bring a voice vote. So people would say aye or nay or whatever. And it was just up to the chair. So sometimes you would have votes where it was very clear that people voted yes or they voted no. And the chair would just say, they voted no, even though it was very obvious. And it was just, they didn't even have to count them. It's insane.
Nuts.
I know. It's insane.
Totally. And like, I don't even think California is bad compared to these other, like, even like Utah, like sometimes they introduce a bill and then like 2 weeks later it's like passed. Like you're like, I haven't even, you know, like if you're just a regular citizen.
Yeah.
And you're not like in the Capitol all the time. Like, how are you? Like, it's absurd.
Well, and what's disillusioning about California, and I've just found this, like, ever since going vegan and getting into animal rights, I've been so disillusioned with Democrats and the left. And by the way, I consider myself a Democrat. I consider myself on the left. I vote that way. However, I've just been so disappointed in them because they profess to care about things like climate change all the time. You hear all these politicians talking about the climate. And the main thing that they could do would be to tackle animal agriculture, and they just have no spine to do it and no desire to do it. I mean, like most of these people just don't even want to. And Sonoma County.
I mean, Robert Rivas, the chair of the Agriculture Committee, who declined to even bring this to a vote, is like generally known as a progressive. And like water use is like one of his, I mean, it's California. There's a huge drought all the time. Like water use is one of his like big things. What's eating all the like you know, it's not people showering. It's the
not
cows.
People showering.
Like
it's the cows.
Just
It's the dairy industry. I mean, you can just look at charts of like, and you know, Yeah, there was a good story that came out about the Colorado River recently about what's draining the Colorado River, and it's of course it's animal agriculture. It's
Alfalfa, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, so I and alfalfa is used to feed these
Right,
animals.
yeah,
So
it's
just to
not
be clear,
sprouts on
yeah,
your sandwich.
right, exactly.
Yeah, it's like
So
soy is deforesting the Amazon, but it's not for tofu.
yeah, yeah, it's just so disappointing. I mean, you're in this dark blue state that you would expect there to be some, ability to get things done on, but essentially what you're having to do is go around politicians and take it directly to the people. And I mean, I was there collecting signatures and I found people to be pretty receptive. I mean, of course, it's an ag community, but how is the door knocking going? Because I know that can be an up and down battle right there.
Yeah. Like, certainly, I would say, like, I mean, there's opposition, but it's
Mhm.
very good. Like, I actually love it.
Mhm.
I wish I
Oh,
had
you
more
like
time.
doing the
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and I've door knocked for candidates, including for
Mhm.
Wayne,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
even for Wayne, like, I don't really, like, love, like, door knocking for candidates because 'cause you're just kinda like there's just, like, so many issues to talk about and just, like, selling this person. But, like, this is great. You're like, "I'm talking about
Mhm.
factory farming. I'm gonna show you photos of farms in your county." These are like, you cannot argue with these. I mean, some people
Yeah.
do, but it's been, like, really great. I would say, um like maybe like 80% of people are either supportive or like undecided, like open-minded.
Mhm.
And then I've had like really great conversations with people who are probably gonna vote no, but like they're like,
Mhm.
they're still like open to it and they're not
Mhm.
hostile. I've had maybe like 3 or 4 actively hostile conversations so far, and the rest have been great. Now I think we are like somewhat selecting who we're talking to. We're
Mhm.
not just like going out and talking to everybody, so it's like
Mhm.
skewed, and I am sure there's something in there where I'm at their door, and if you're a
Mhm.
decent human
Mhm.
being, you're probably gonna slightly lie to the person and be like, "Oh yeah, I'll vote yes."
Mhm.
But, I
Mhm.
didn't like, I do get the sense that people are pretty open, and it's just so hard to know what will happen on November 5th.
I
Yeah.
found knocking on doors for political campaigns to be a much more rewarding experience than, say, doing the phones because, yeah, at least when people see you, they're not quite as rude to you. I mean, it does happen. I have had negative experiences, but I would say, similar to you, most of my experiences, like 80%, are along the lines of what you said. Um, yeah, I even like was knocking on doors in Maryland for gay marriage before that was passed. So, I mean, granted, that's a blue state, most people were fairly supportive. But it's a contentious issue. And yeah, I think it's I think it's good. You mentioned being more of an introvert, but I don't see that. I think you've grown out of that. So you seem to really
Like,
enjoy it.
I like talking to people, I like being around
Mhm.
people, big crowds don't scare me, but I am like the reason I say I'm an introvert is that I don't like I'll be drained after and I will wanna be
Mhm.
alone. So, like, it's like, how
Yeah.
some people, like, they get their energy from being around other people? I'm like, now I need to, like, decompress and be alone,
Yeah.
and that is how I will get my energy back, but I'm not, like, shy. Like, I don't think I have, like, a ton of social anxiety or something like that.
You're in Sonoma County right now, right? And, probably will be through November, is that correct?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and not alone, obviously, there's, like, a team of people, and then there's Sonoma County residents, of course, as well, like, this is also a homegrown effort, it's not just DxE folks, it's,
The Berkeley terrorists coming in, as they would say.
yeah, yeah, as they would like to paint you as, I'm sure.
Yeah,
It's hard to, yeah, like I said, it's hard to paint you as a terrorist when the terrorist is at your door with a little notepad just asking
yeah,
you to yeah, I
yeah.
mean, yeah. Um, so, you also have a convergence coming up, I know. What can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so this is just gonna be, like, a big effort for the Measure J campaign. We'll do
Mhm,
other things too, but a lot will be around getting people out to door knock, phones, banner drops. We're gonna do a march, all of that. It's August 23rd to August
mhm,
27th. People are coming from around the country, maybe somebody from out of the country, probably not, this is, like, more of a somewhat local thing, but,
mhm, mhm,
5 days. It's gonna be great if you, feel nervous about knocking on doors. please come anyway. There'll be training. We always go in pairs, like all that good stuff. So it's going to be, I mean, we're not going to just be door knocking 10 hours a day. Nobody wants to do that. So other things happening like trainings, march, as I mentioned, vigil at the slaughterhouse, community stuff, general fun, good times in Petaluma, California.
Yeah.
Food,
Well, I
obviously.
mean, yeah, like you said, like you it can be life-changing to go to these convergences. I mean, you talked about the ALC back when it was the DxE. What did they call it in the beginning? I forget. The
DxE
DxE.
Forum.
DxE Forum, yeah. So, I mean, that was a life-changing experience for you. And it was also about finding community and finding purpose. And I think, you know, every time that I have been asked to come to something related to DxE, related, um, and I've said yes, I have had a very, very rewarding experience. And there were stories to me that would be like stories I would tell my grandkids, you know, like it's a well, I'd have to have grandkids first, but yeah, it would be
Tell somebody else's grandkids.
yeah, I'll I'll tell somebody else's grandkids. But yeah, no, they're just amazing opportunities to sort of find your voice. And yeah, I mean, knocking on doors, I mean, for someone who may be introverted, seems like kind of hard at first, but no, it can actually be pretty fun. And like you said, I mean, there are people who will actually do it by themselves, but mostly you do it as a pair. You know, because you know, we don't want people like, you know, feeling unsafe and that sort of thing. So yeah, it becomes like almost like a game. Like I don't know how you guys are doing it, but like back in the day when we did politics, we'd have these big charts. You know, you have to go through the chart, hit all these
Yep.
addresses. It's pretty sophisticated, and you know where you're going, and you just get
Basically
through
that,
it.
but now it's of course an app.
Oh, it's an app. Okay, yeah,
Yeah, you
yeah,
don't have to pay for
yeah.
it anymore, but yes,
Back in
basically.
my day, we didn't have that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was just a notepad or something. But yeah, yeah, I would definitely encourage anybody who's listening to this, and obviously anybody who's listening to this is, you know, I hope it gets beyond the animal rights community, but mostly it's the animal rights community that's going to be listening to this. I would encourage anybody to get involved in these efforts because, as Almira has said, this could be a game changer. It could be a momentous moment for the animal rights movement. I mean, imagine if one county bans factory farming, bans, you know, like the worst industry practices. And this is an agriculture community. I mean, that's why they're fighting tooth and nail to paint you as these extremists when you're people who just want to see animals not be hurt. I mean, imagine that. It's a very dangerous ideology you're trying to spread, Almira.
It's
Um,
true.
Compassion and kindness. That's a real threat to the status quo, unfortunately. But yeah, I would definitely encourage anybody to go to the convergence. And I mean, there's also, you know, there's also ways to get involved. Like let's say if you can't come, there's also ways you could probably like, I don't know, maybe do postcards or write letters or something. Obviously, we're trying to encourage people to go though.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who are doing phone banking, and like phone
Mm,
banking can be done from anywhere.
yeah.
Um, I will say it's like not as fun as door knocking, but also like, yeah, I think that's a good thing. And also like some people, you know, right now it's been like super hot. I can
Hmm.
handle it okay, but like some people like can't go out, or maybe you can't walk super far for
Hmm.
whatever reason. You have companion animals at home.
Hmm.
Phone banking is awesome. I'm sure like Jeremy can put you in touch with me, or like actually probably the best thing to do,
Hmm.
yesonj.vote. That's the
Yes, on
website.
Jada.
Yesonj.vote. There's like a volunteer tab. Just like sign up to volunteer.
Yeah, and phone banking, by the way, I mean, it's just incredibly helpful. I mean, some of these things that, you know, I don't know, Elmira and I don't find it the funnest thing, but some people really take to it.
Some
I
people
mean,
love it. Like
yeah.
they're like they love it. Like Michelle's always phone banking. I
Oh,
think she
really?
likes it.
Michelle is
Yeah.
doing it? Oh,
Yeah. Oh
okay.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's because I mean, the reason that I don't like it, you don't have that face-to-face interaction, but like you said, you can stay out of the heat. You can also sort of do it on your own time, you know, make your own
Yeah.
hours, that sort of thing. So you could be in Chicago, you could be in Carolina, you could be anywhere, phone banking. And I mean, you know, I don't even know, like there's going to be phases, I'm sure, like once it gets close to the election, it's basically like, here's when you vote, here's where you vote, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. And maybe you're in persuasion mode right now, right? Sort of just talking to people and
Yeah,
trying to
we're
inform
totally, yeah,
them.
we're in persuasion mode, trying to get people either information for the first time or correcting misinformation that they have
Hmm.
from the Farm Bureau, and that kind of stuff. And I think
Yeah.
of it like, every house we go to or every phone, like even if somebody doesn't pick up or somebody's not home, like we're leaving something for them. So in the case of
Hmm.
doors, we're like taping the flyer to the door. In the case of phones, we're sending a text message, just like following up. And so
Hmm.
like every person, even if like they don't end up voting, is now at least getting educated
Hmm.
on this issue. And I think one of the things that I really like about it is it's framing this issue in a political way. This is
Hmm.
not about you have to change your diet right now and it's just about what you eat. It's like what is happening to animals is a political issue that deserves a stage, whether
Hmm.
you like whatever side of the issue you're on. And I think in that sense, we really are succeeding at that because like this is hot conversation in Sonoma County, next door, Facebook groups, like I would say almost 50% of people we talk to now have at least heard of this measure, and it's
Hmm.
July.
Hmm.
November is a ways away, so it's certainly, like, is the thing that people are
Hmm.
talking about, especially for, like, local politics. Obviously, there's, like, the other big thing happening in November, which is just, like, depressing all around,
What?
so
What thing?
this is more exciting, you know? I'm like,
Yeah.
"There's a
Yeah.
clear yes here, a
Yeah.
good thing to vote for." Yeah.
Yeah, another thing that I found back in the day that was helpful, just a way of thinking about it, because sometimes you struggle to think like if you've gone out and you've knocked on a bunch of doors and you didn't reach somebody, sometimes you get this sense like, wow, what did I just do? Did I do anything? Well, what you did was free up someone else to be knocking on other doors. So the doors that you knocked on, someone else would have had to knock on. So maybe you didn't have luck in your doors, but maybe say Almira and I were out and I was knocking on the doors that weren't getting, but Almira's there killing it because she's getting everybody. So you're basically supporting each other. You're freeing up the work. So that's a way. The
Mhm.
phones are the same way of doing that. So maybe you have a shitty time on the phones one day. You're like, damn, everybody was cussing me out. Well, you know, and usually that doesn't
You
happen.
took all the bad ones, so somebody
Yeah, you
else
took the
can
bad
do it.
ones to someone so
Yeah,
Michelle could have all the good ones, you
yeah,
know? Yeah, and Michelle needs the good ones, because Michelle
totally.
works hard. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so DxE has also been roiled by controversies over the year. I mean, like every animal rights movement. And I've been impressed by how DxE has weathered those storms because DxE has been one of the most targeted for criticisms and kind of outlandish accusations. I know that some of the accusations have merit, but a lot of them are kind of absurd allegations. So I know that as lead organizer, one of your main roles is just dealing with controversy, and I know it must take up so much of your time. So how do you I know this is a broad question, but how do you approach it? How do you go about it and keep your sanity?
Yeah, I'm not gonna say, like, I think I have, like, the best approach, like, sometimes I'm pretty conflict averse, so it's just like, you
Mhm.
know, like, people are saying shit on the internet. I don't necessarily feel the need to, like, jump in, like, I don't know,
Mhm.
um so I'm just like, I'll wait until it really blows up. And again, like, maybe that's like not the right approach. That's just honest. Because I think people will just say shit and it sucks. But
Mhm.
the internet is a place where people hurl accusations at each other all the time that are like and like you said, like usually things are like somewhat grounded in like there's something that
Mhm.
happened and then it just gets like telephoned or like blown completely out of proportion where it's like, whoa, okay, like
Mhm.
that's extreme. But like, look for like what's the nugget of truth in there that's something that we could actually address. But yeah, sometimes I just like kind of let it go. I think in a sense, like things have definitely like I think Wayne has been like the target of a lot of that. For better or for worse, like better in the sense that like things seem to have like somewhat tapered down. A lot of like the complaints and stuff you see on the internet are kind of like the old things rehashed. Um,
Mhm.
but I think that's just kind of like what happens when you have a personality a bit like Wayne's, where he's like very much like I think that my like most people don't know who I am. Like it's not like where I have this like personality that I'm like out there and I have like a platform and I'm like this very like eloquent and charismatic and inspiring speaker. Like that's not really the type of role that I play. That was what Wayne was really good at. And I think that was awesome. And it inspired a ton of people to take action, including myself, and also made him this like target, right? Because it's like, that's the guy. And like, I'm going to get mad at him for like things that he's like, I didn't even do that. Like he gets in trouble for shit like I did. I mean, like, you know, nothing that I would say is horrible, but like, that's just kind of like what happens when you are this like lightning rod.
Yeah, I can say during the trial, Wayne kept getting in trouble for what DxE was doing outside.
Yeah. And it's just like, he's just like, I can't, you know, so yeah, I think that is part of it. It sucks. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it really sucks.
Yeah.
I would say I'm glad that you're someone who doesn't feel the need to dive in every time. I have the benefit of just having done an interview with Wayne because we were doing one in advance of Ridgeland. So we kind of got into this a little bit too. And he was just saying, yeah, that some advice he had gotten from a law school buddy of his was just like, do the good work and let the work speak for itself. And yeah, if there's some controversy, I feel like you're sort of a nose to the grindstone kind of person. And
yeah,
that's
I think
what
Wayne sometimes is more like I need to talk to all these people. And like, I think there's like, sometimes that's good. And I think sometimes I'm like too far, but also like, sometimes it's just like you said, if people want to like, come hang out with us, decide for yourself. Are we horrible people? Or are we like flawed humans trying to like help the world, you know?
Yeah, doing your best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure you've made mistakes over the years, as I have made mistakes in my life. Wayne has made mistakes. So I'm not, I don't want to just blow, smoke and it just, but I actually like a lot of the controversies that happen with DxE, I've heard secondhand. So I don't know their veracity. I know some of them that I've heard are absurd. And I've seen, I've seen bits and pieces here and there. And but yeah, I have always seen you as someone who sort of keeps focus, and that I want to thank you for that because I see, and even I'll give a mild criticism of Wayne is that I agree with you. I think that he sort of overestimates, I think, his ability to bring everyone together all the time, and it gets him into trouble sometimes. So I appreciate that about him, but I also just think sometimes there's a situation that you can't control. I mean, for instance, I think it was the day that he got sent to prison, or I don't know, one of those days where we were approached by a journalist in the press team about some allegations that were really old. And I think I remember you handling it very well. I remember you responding basically, these are old allegations. You can refer back to X or Y. And it was basically what you're saying. Like you're saying, I'm not dealing with this right now. I mean, you dealt with it in an appropriate way, is what I'm saying. Also, does it ever offend you? Because like we sort of joke about this sometimes about how you've been the lead organizer of DxE for like 5 years. And a lot of times people do. And you even joked about when I was saying, oh, I'll call it the lead organizer. You're like, Wayne?
Yeah.
A lot of times people still think Wayne is the lead organizer of DxE, and he's not even technically a part of DxE.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not like offended by it. I just think it's really like rich when it's often coming from people like that criticism is like Wayne runs this cult and he's just like controlling all these things that people do. And I think that's like pretty insulting. Like, I mean, a lot of the work is done like, or like, yeah. And then of course it's like couched in like sexism and misogyny. And he's just like overbearing and to the extent, and then people say like all things about like sexual assault, which is like, that is like out of left field. I've never even seen an accusation of sexual assault against Wayne. But yeah, and it's like, well, like, do you think like women don't have like minds of their own to like do all these things? It's usually like the people who were saying that, like, yeah, DxE is run by this cult. And I'm like, oh, please tell me who's the cult leader. Like,
Mhm.
because like, like so I
You.
think that's like, yeah, like, yeah, apparently it's me. So like, it doesn't offend me if somebody's just like, oh, Wayne, blah, blah, blah. But then when it's coming as like a criticism that he's running this cult and like
Mhm.
everybody under him is just under his spell and doing whatever he wants, like that's when it's
Mhm.
really offensive. And then they're the people calling us out for sexism. And
Yeah.
yeah, just like disregarding all of this like hard work that like women put into it. And it's like 100% like I don't think Wayne is doing anything to add to that. Like he's actively like, yeah, I'm not in DxE. He gets blamed for the good and praised for the bad of DxE all the time. He's
Mhm.
like, I didn't
Mhm.
do any of those things.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think again, like partly just has to do with one, like he's a co-founder. He was like the face of DxE, or one of like a few for a really long time. And it's just like his leadership style is like very, I think, different than mine, in that he
Mhm.
is a like really incredible public speaker. He's an incredible writer. He has like this social media page. So he's just like out there a lot more than
Yeah.
I am. And I think that's one of probably my weaknesses, is that I'm not like somebody who I think is really great at like inspiring people and like giving them this like really bold vision. I'm like very good at organizing the things,
Mhm.
but I think we don't work together. Obviously, we can't even speak to each other. But
Mhm.
like I think we have different leadership styles that probably would complement each other really well, because we
I
kind of
agree.
each other out. It's just,
Yeah.
but then also we would like, the funny thing is like I really like Wayne, we're like really good friends. We like fight all the time about things. So this
Yeah.
idea too
So do
that like,
we.
yeah, like I'm just like, oh my God, the number of things that I disagree with Wayne on and that we like have like really fought over is
Mhm.
just kind of funny for a supposed cult leader, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah. I've been trying to make that point on my channel quite a bit, and about how much disagreement that Wayne and I have. I mean, we and it's respectful disagreement,
Mhm.
but we have tense discussions sometimes because we disagree on a lot of things, actually. So it's not this cult. I mean, obviously the simple heart is, basically Wayne founded it with Dean, and it's their project. And it's a team, but he'll have final say over a lot of things, obviously.
Mhm.
But I appreciate that he welcomes dissenting opinion and encourages it. And I see that in DxE too. I mean, DxE has a different kind of structure, but yeah, I just I don't know. Like I was gonna read this for you. This is I don't know if you probably have seen what Wayne said about you. Like there was a recent controversy that DxE had to weather, and you were sort of being targeted. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I hope this doesn't embarrass you, but it's a little bit of praise for you. But
I don't know what it is.
oh, okay. Well,
Well, maybe, I don't know. Do
yeah.
I?
Well, it was back when there was problems on the legal team, and
Oh, yeah.
yeah, this is a really long message, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just read some of it. Wayne said, I have made many mistakes in my life, but one of the best choices I ever made was to suggest Almira Tanner as the new lead organizer for DxE in the summer of 2019. There is literally no one I know who has her organizing skills. She could have used this exceptional talent for other important cause areas such as healthcare, where she once worked as an occupational therapist. If you need someone to take a complex project and break it down into smaller pieces so a team can effectively manage it, Almira is the person you need. I'm going to scroll. This is a long message, but basically, Almira, he finishes, Almira is one of the best. Thank you, Almira. You're doing great things for so many. And for our animal friends, we're all lucky to have you on our side. And I agree with that. I thought that was a really nice message too. And yeah, I felt like at that point you were being unfairly targeted. I don't know if you want to talk about that situation at all, because it's kind of I don't know, we
Yeah,
could,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
again, like probably one of those things where I think I probably didn't always maybe do totally the right thing, but it's kind of complicated. Where to start? Okay, so like basically the end of the Animal Liberation Conference in
Mhm.
2023. So this is about almost like 13 months ago. There had been this action at Petaluma Poultry Slaughterhouse here, very close to where I am right
Mhm.
now. 18 chickens had been rescued from inside the slaughterhouse, or like trucks supplying the slaughterhouse, all this kind of stuff.
Mm.
We find out about a day or two after, there was this group chat with people with various affiliations to DxE in it who called the police in advance of that action to try to stop this action. Now, they thought that the action was like rescuing a horse from Wayne rescuing a horse from Golden Gate Fields. So like that was not what it was. And they were very they didn't succeed at disrupting this action, but they tried. They called, I guess, the Berkeley Police Department to try to stop Wayne from openly rescuing a horse at Golden Gate Fields. Bananas.
Mm.
And the supposed goal of that was to not have Wayne be getting his glory for doing another open rescue and like not have women trapped in a court case with him because he was going to exploit them. That's never happened. And also it's just like one of those other examples of like Wayne wasn't even involved. I think Wayne was asleep. And like so he's like getting this credit for like doing this big action when it's like other women who I'm not going to name, but you know, like planning this shit, rescuing 18 chickens, never been done before at the slaughterhouse. And then it's like, we must stop Wayne. Wayne's like asleep in his bed, doesn't know what's going on. And one of the people like in that group chat was our legal coordinator, and another person was a co-defendant of mine and Wayne's in the Sonoma case. And so that was like pretty surprising. Now, those two individuals did not, they weren't the ones who made the police call, and I'm not going to like name them and all that kind of stuff. But obviously the fact that our legal coordinator is in a group chat about taking down DxE is like not great. And I called them and that morning and was like, hey, I'm going to like kick you out of these group chats for right now and suspend your email while we like figure out what the heck is going on. And to the other person, the co-defendant, also suspended her DxE email account and was like, let's just have a conversation about this. You know, like, because these people have access to a lot of things, especially like legal coordinator, all this confidential information. At this point, we don't know. They could be like informing the police because clearly they want to destroy us. And so like I got in a lot of shit for retaliation and like suspending this person's DxE email. And it kind of just, you know, basically went from there. I think like really tried a lot to have a conversation with that person, like the co-defendant, and like wasn't interested in it. Several people reached out. And yeah, so that's kind of where we were at with that. Like I'm sure there are things that I could have done to handle that better, but I also like don't think that doing that was wrong. And I think part of the reason was that the other people who were involved in that action, who actually were rescuing animals, not supposedly rescuing a horse, and also like co-defendants were like very much like, you know, I do not trust this person. I do not want them to have access to this information. I do not want, you know, and those are the people that like I'm tasked to protect. When you do an action and somebody tries to like stop you from doing that and get you arrested so you can't rescue animals, like that's a pretty low bar. Or like to like hold somebody to, let alone legal coordinator. So yeah. And I think that's one of those things that just happens in grassroots movements. We're very open. We're very welcoming to people. You're not hired. Pretty much anybody can volunteer. I think it's really incredible that somebody can, like me, this random person can just like walk in and for a couple of years later, you're like running the organization or organizer. And I don't ever want like some negative experiences to make us so paranoid that we don't trust people and put them in these roles, but it happens. Like, and yeah, so it's tough. And yeah, I think got a lot of shit for it. And then I think when people heard the full story, they were like, oh, okay, I don't know. Maybe that's just my biased perspective on it, but I feel like
I didn't. Yeah, I didn't see all of it. So I am just assuming that Wayne was responding to you being sort of criticized publicly.
Oh yeah, an email was sent out slamming me to like 2,000 people in the animal rights movement. So that was
Oh,
great.
wow. Yeah. So, I mean, and let me just be clear. I don't know the people who are doing this. I've never met them. And so I am not in any way trying to disparage or speak ill of them, or to make light of it. because like as we have kind of talked about, like usually when things get blown out of proportion, maybe there's some nugget of something,
Mhm.
that caused it. I don't know. Um, so I'm just gonna breeze past this though, because I just don't know the situation, but I just want to ask, I just want to make sure I'm not being disrespectful to them, but I just want to ask how you as an organizer sort of like keep your sanity during a situation like that, and keep it together, because I know organizers who have dealt with far less than that, who have basically walked away from the movement because they've had to deal with conflicts that were
Mhm.
far less threatening.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I don't know, like, um, it like, I must say, like, it does suck, like, I don't always like, I feel like I don't really trust I trust everybody and I don't really trust anybody in the sense of
Mhm,
like, God, I've been really surprised before. Like some of these people who have like turned or whatever, for lack of a better word, like we're like I really like those people. I think they're great people.
mhm.
We were really good friends. Like it sucks. And I just think I don't know, like, think about things you can do better so that becomes less likely. I think
Mhm,
those people were,
mhm,
like, upset about various things.
mhm.
Again, I don't think to do with me. I don't think things that, like, justify their actions, but, you know, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how I keep my sanity. Maybe I don't. I just
Well,
don't know what the alternative is. Like, I think that's
mhm,
part of it. It's like, okay, so what?
mhm.
You're gonna
Well,
leave. I don't think that's gonna help, and,
mhm.
um,
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I
I don't know.
guess, what is it that, sort of gets you up in the morning? So
Coffee.
like sometimes, yeah, coffee. So that's the trick, coffee. Well, I mean, so there are times when I'm going to do something that I'm sort of nervous about, and I'm like, well, what can inspire me in these moments? I really took a lot of inspiration from the film EO about that donkey. And
Oh,
it's just this like very powerful story about a donkey going, basically touring animal agriculture and all the ways we exploit animals. In any case, it's a very emotive like portrayal of this animal. Has this powerful soundtrack. So sometimes I'll just like put in my headphones and listen to that, and I'll just think about, EO just representing the animals that I'm trying to save, or what this is about, and it gives me like kind of an extra little boost of courage if I need it. So I'm just wondering, like, was there anything that you turned to in those moments? I know you have a good network of friends at DxE
mhm.
who are always with you, but was there anything that helped get you through these kind of dark moments? And was this like sort of one of the darker moments for you?
Honestly, no,
No? Okay.
because I feel like yeah, not to sound like an asshole, but I feel like in this case, like, it's just like, yeah, like, this is, like, unacceptable behavior, and we're not even kicking you out of DXE, I'm just, like, removing your
Mhm,
DXE email address and, like, removing you from our organizing chats, like, for right
mhm,
now. So I didn't yeah, that to me was not that bad, to be honest. I think, like, the stuff that
mhm,
was more, like, interpersonal, like, gosh, like, maybe this person, like, really did offend that person, and, like, but what do we do with that? And, like, people just, like, fighting and, like, the internet being such a toxic place and, like, all of that, like, that stuff has been worse for me. Um, haven't had maybe one of those negative I mean, honestly, like, a lot of the conflict that I would say, like, actually, for sure, the conflict around, like, Israel and Palestine and, like, DXC making a statement for a ceasefire, like, all of that was, like, way more, was way harder on me because it was like,
mhm,
gosh, I like, these are, like, I don't know, like, people are all coming to me on the most part, I think, in good faith with concerns and on all sides of this, and, like, versus just like, "Dude, like, that was a really fucked up thing y'all did." So, yeah, I wouldn't say so.
yeah.
What have I turned to? Yeah, I think I'm, like, really lucky. I have, like, a really supportive family.
Mhm,
Um, not that I even necessarily talked about this, but like I think in the back of my mind, I know like shit really hits the fan. I've got like my family in my back. And that is not something that I take for granted because I know that is not true for a lot of people. Like I have this safety net, even like not like necessarily like a financial safety net or anything, just like
Mhm.
an emotional safety net is there. I have like a really awesome partner who lets me complain.
Mhm.
I listen to good music. Obviously,
Mhm.
I think it's good music.
Yeah.
Journal, like that kind of stuff. So yeah.
You're it was kind of funny watching the dynamic between you and your partner in the car sometimes. You're kind of like you were kind of letting him have it, and he was just this is very chill, just like, okay." I
Yeah,
think that's a nice.
he's very non-combative.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
somebody who's ever gonna door knock on his own, just, like,
Right,
the
right.
most introverted.
And your
Like,
family, are they in Vancouver?
yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you get to see them much? I know there's all kinds of issues with border crossage and
Yeah, for, like, a very long like, basically between the charges in 2018 and when I took the plea deal, I did not leave the country,
Mhm,
because of my immigration situation, and that really sucked. Like, they did come and visit me, and so that was good. It wasn't like I never saw
mhm,
them, but I wasn't able to go home for almost 5 years. But I did. Now I can. So I
mhm.
get, you know, I plan to go back like once a year or so.
Nice, nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think those are my questions. Is there anything I didn't cover I should cover or anything that you wanted to say besides come to the
No.
convergence? Because I know that's what
Yeah,
you
I
want.
hope it's interesting. I always feel like I kind of ramble on random things, but
I think it
hopefully
was interesting.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. Well, again, come to the convergence, and I guess where can people find you? Do you want people following your social media, that sort of thing?
I mean, they can. I'm not a great poster, but I do have social media. So you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter or
Mhm,
and Facebook, I guess. I don't have TikTok.
mhm. Okay.
Um, yeah.
So
You
basically,
can see me
follow.
reshare DxE stuff on my story.
Yeah. Follow Almira's Instagram, follow DxE's
Yeah,
Instagram,
do that.
and yeah, do
And
that.
the Coalition to End Factory Farming's
The
Instagram.
Coalition to End Factory Farming. Yeah. And that, is it now the Yes on J? Is it called that? Or
Yeah, I think like the gosh, I'm like not even I'm so bad at social media. I think the name of the account is Yes on J, but the handle on Instagram is
Mhm.
like at End Factory Farming SoCo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Confusing.
If you
I don't
search like Measure J or like Yes on Measure J, you'll find it.
I'll
You
put
can
the
put it in
links
your
below.
show. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just ignore what we just said and just follow the links that I
Or
just
just go
found.
to the website, yesonj.vote. All the links are there.
Yeah. Well, Almira, I'll let you go, but I just want to say again, I think you're a great leader of direct action everywhere. I think you're the right person for the job. I think it's just incredible. We're incredibly lucky to have you. I just want to reiterate what Wayne has said, what others have said. I do see you also as the glue that holds this whole thing together. Were you ever to not be in this role, I think it would be a pretty dramatic loss for the movement. So yeah, I'm glad you took the plea deal and
Yeah.
didn't get
Well,
yourself
I will
deported.
say, like, I don't think I'll be in this role forever, but that doesn't mean I would leave the movement. I think it's good
Mhm.
to have leadership transition. And so I hope that somebody else is in this role soon, but that doesn't like I don't say that because I want to leave and
Mhm.
go be an occupational therapist.
Right, right. Are you done with that? Are you gonna ever do that again?
Yeah, when we achieve animal liberation and I need to go make some money after that,
So next year you can do it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're gonna
Maybe 2030. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Thank you, Almira. I appreciate
Cool.
you. All
Alrighty.
right.
Bye.
Bye.
Do I
Oh,
like
just
leave
stay
the
on